Hi folks, hope you're all well. This is a short video clip on legal supplements in sports. Now this topic can easily be short answer questions in the exam. You could get like a 3-mark question on one of the supplements in sport. Or, as we've seen in the past, we could have all the supplements added together and it could make up half an essay question. But the point is you attack them the same. We need to know about 3 or 4 things about each of these key supplements in sport. Now in terms of the AQA exam board, what are the supplements we need to know about? Well, as you can see from this picture, there are lots of different supplements out there. It's a multi-million-pound industry in this country. People buying things to put weight on, to lose weight, to bulk up, to increase this, that and everything else in the systems. But there's only certain ones we need to know about. And in no particular order, we need to know about protein, in particular protein powder, but any type of protein supplementation. This word should be familiar to you. We need to know about creatine. So when we spoke about the PC system, the phosphocreatine system, or the creatine phosphate system, we're talking about that there. We're going to be talking about caffeine, which used to be illegal up until the early 2000s when it was actually legalised. Because, as I'm sure you're aware, caffeine is in a great many products, and it's so difficult to police and govern exactly how much caffeine people are taking when it's in all different kind of things. A weird one. Bicarbonate of soda. Now, this is also known as soda loading. So you might read it as either in textbooks and things like that. And finally, another one that you may or may not have heard of, you should be familiar with them, Herbal Remedies. It might be, though, you're thinking, well, I didn't know athletes took these. Well, some do, and we're going to be looking at those each in turn. So probably the most common one is protein powder. Now, I've got an example of a 100% whey protein picture here. Okay, now, this isn't important for the exam, but if you're into these kind of things, I've got to be brutally honest with you. Pretty much all protein powders are the same. They all contain amino acids, the building blocks of protein, and that leads us on to why would you take them? What is it about protein powders? Well, the thing is, they aim to increase muscle mass, as you would expect. Protein is the building blocks of our muscle. There's a lot of tissues in our body, but the building blocks of muscle tissue. So the more protein you take, in theory, the more muscle tissue you build. But obviously you've got to train first. You've got to slightly damage the muscles through heavy resistance training or something like that, and then take the protein supplementation afterwards. So other things that you might get the mark for saying is it enhances muscle growth and repair. But they're likely to be on the same line in the mark scheme. So it aims to increase muscle mass, or it enhances muscle growth and repair. Other things that it's worth saying about them, it's very beneficial, well, to all athletes, but particularly to vegetarian athletes. Think about it. Where do we get the vast majority of our protein from? We get it from our meat products. And what do vegetarians not eat? They don't eat meat. So protein supplementation is very, very beneficial to vegetarian athletes. What is the overriding reason for taking protein other than to increase muscle mass? I mean, we can have it off here. What are we all trying to do? We are trying to increase strength. The more muscle tissue we have, the thicker those actin and myosin filaments in our muscles, the stronger the cross bridges that form. It all leads to that hypertrophy, however you want to pronounce it. It doesn't really matter, since you're going to be writing it anyway, not pronouncing it in the exam. But that's the overriding reason for taking protein powders. However, as with everything, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are some downsides to it, there are some negatives, there are some issues that we need to be aware of, and this is very important if you get one of those discuss questions. Discuss whether an athlete should take protein supplementation. The 3 that we've got here are definite pros in protein's favour. Increases muscle mass, or enhances muscle growth and repair. It's great for vegetarian athletes, it increases strength, it causes hypertrophy. But there are a couple of issues. As with anything, if you take too much, and because these are the downsides, I'll write them in blue. If you take too much of anything, it increases the amount of work for your liver and kidneys in particular, so they ultimately can cause liver and kidney damage. Your liver and your kidneys, once your stomach's digested whatever you've eaten or consumed, your liver and kidneys are involved in the processing of that. You know, where should it go? Where should it stored? What needs to be kept in? What needs to be filtered out? So if I'm immediately taking more of something, that immediately makes more work for the liver and kidneys, which is, you know, going to have a negative effect in the long term. Also, taking protein supplementation is no better. I did my B the wrong way then, that would have been good, wouldn't it? No better than eating a balanced diet. These things change, these guidelines change, but just to give you an example, when I was at university, I was told by one of my lecturers who works as part of the Team GB cycling team at the Velodrome in Manchester, that a normal person, in order for you to maintain muscle mass, you need 0.8 grams of protein for every kilogram you weigh every day. So a 100 kilogram person needs 80 grams of protein. That's to maintain muscle mass. If you want to bulk up and put muscle mass on, that increases to 1.1 grams per kilogram of body mass that you weigh. So again, that 100 kilogram person now needs 110 grams. Well, 80 to 110 grams, that's not very much at all. That's like half a chicken fillet. That's, you know, a tin of tuna, something like that. It's minor, it's very minute. So we don't need this idea of we need to take a protein shake in the morning, one at dinner, one before training, one after training. That's not correct. And that's what can actually increase the amount of liver and kidney damage, because your body can't use that much protein, so it all just has to get filtered out. So if we just eat a balanced diet, we're going to get the right amount of protein that we need for our training, for our lifestyle. Okay, so let's move on to our next one, creatine. You'll often see it advertised, as it says here, as creatine monohydrate. Okay, it is creatine that makes up the phosphocreatine system. So straight away, think back to what you know about the phosphocreatine system. It's the energy system that resynthesizes ATP for up to 8 to 10 seconds, and when we are working anaerobically, maximally. So let's just have a little in brackets there, 8 to 10 seconds. Sorry, just hit the wrong icon then. Okay, and maximally or anaerobically. So straight away, we should be thinking about, right, we should know which athletes are going to be interested in taking creatine as part of a supplementation strategy. So what does it aim to do? What are the key things around creatine supplementation? It aims to resynthesize ATP for longer, or we could put that simpler, we can extend the ATP PC system, or just the PC system, however you prefer to write it. So as we know, as we've just written up there, it can last for 8 to 10 seconds. Through creatine supplementation, we might get it to 11 or 12 seconds. Equally though, don't forget that this energy system takes 2 to 3 minutes to recover. So when I've used my PC stores and I've exhausted them after 10 seconds of maximal work, they will take 2 to 3 minutes to recover. If I've stuck a little bit more creatine in my system, it might recover slightly quicker, in maybe 2.5 minutes, 2 minutes, 90 seconds, depending on how well I've trained. And people often report that one of the big effects that they have through creatine is that they've done a heavy set or a sprint and they feel like they're ready to go sooner than what they normally are. So it can speed up the recovery of the PC system as well. So it's great for high intensity training, and the development of, powerful movements. What I would say is this though, you were reading textbooks that it helps increase muscle mass. It does, but remember, this isn't protein. Creatine doesn't build muscle tissue. It allows you to train harder for a little bit longer, get a little bit more high intensity work done each session, so that over the course of time your muscles will get a little bit bigger, but it doesn't increase muscle growth and repair. You will often find that a lot of athletes will take creatine before a training session and then take protein after it. So you get more heavy work done in the training session due to the creatine, which causes a little bit more damage to the myofibrils, to the actin and myosin filaments. You then take the protein afterwards, and that speeds up the muscle growth and repair. So you'll often find that, power athletes, sprinters, jumpers, things like that, throwers, will take both, one before and one after. However, exactly like protein, there are downsides to this. The number one downside is there is mixed evidence. Oops, missed my pen. Mixed evidence on positive benefits, i.e., for all the studies out there that show the benefits of protein, there are just as many that say actually there was no significant increase in training. So there seems to be quite a lot of conflicting information out there on the exact benefits of creatine supplementation. Equally, there are a lot of side effects reported with creatine. Now, all of these are going to be on the same line in the mark scheme in the exam, so you're only going to get marks for, a couple of these, so don't remember them all. But common side effects are water retention. People often report putting on about 3 kilos within a week of taking creatine, but it's not muscle mass, it's water retention. They're storing more water, okay? They also get cramps. They also get, and here's my least favourite word in the world for spelling, also reported to get, I think that's right, you have to think about it, diarrhea, okay? Which, let's face it, all well and good being able to lift weights for slightly longer and recover slightly quicker, but if you run into the toilet every 5 minutes, what's the quality of your training session going to be like? It's not going to be great, okay? And there is also the report of vomiting. I've taken too much creatine before in the past, and I've had every single one of those symptoms. And let's face it, it could have all the benefits in the world, creatine, but if you're having all those symptoms together, there is no way you're going to train. There's no way you're certainly going to train effectively, but it's unlikely that you're going to train at all. Okay, so let's now caffeine. Now, don't start panicking at the look of this picture. You don't have to know the caffeine content of common substances. That's just a little bit of FYI information there. That's a recent picture I managed to get hold of. We've seen a massive explosion in the sports drinks industry, with drinks like Red Bull, with Emerge, with Monster, with Relentless, with all these different ones. The vast majority of them contain caffeine. As you can see, it's double the amount of caffeine that you have in things like Coke. It's nearly double the amount you have in black tea. That was surprising to me. Look, one shot of espresso has only 27 milligrams of caffeine, whereas a can of Red Bull has 80 milligrams of caffeine. So that's quite substantial. You're up there with instant coffee in terms of a can of Red Bull. So caffeine is in all products. It's in chocolate. It's in a lot of our carbonated drinks. It's in coffee, it's in tea. And that's why it was, or it is now, legal to take. It was illegal. But how can you monitor your caffeine intake? It's practically impossible. You could have a can of Coke, a cup of coffee, and then a sports drink, compete in the 100 metres and then fail a drug test and be banned for 2 years. You've hardly, done anything monstrously bad, have you? So it's now legal, and you're now okay to take caffeine as part of your supplementation process. Now, total and utter common sense on this. Why do we all take caffeine? We do it to increase our mental alertness. We take caffeine when we are tired, when we've had not enough sleep, or a little bit too much, and we're just starting to flag a little bit. And the word that is sometimes used with that is, it is a stimulant. There are legal stimulants, there are illegal stimulants. Caffeine is a legal stimulant. So it improves mental alertness. It speeds up reaction time. You will react quicker when on caffeine than when you are not on caffeine. Simply because at that point above, you are more alert. You can pick out the stimuli and respond to the stimuli quicker once you've taken some caffeine. It is quite a unique one. You might not know this. It actually increases fat metabolism. You will burn, if you were to go for a run, and let's say that jog, you would be burning 50% carbs, 50% fats. With caffeine supplement, if you take caffeine before, you might go 55% fats and 45% carbs. So you'll actually increase your usage of fats. So from that point of view, it's actually quite a good diet or weight management supplement or substance to use. So not only does it speed up mental alertness, not only does it speed up your reaction times, but it also increases the amount of fat that you metabolize in order to produce energy. To that benefit, it aids endurance athletes. Why? Well, you think about someone who's got to do a marathon. You can eat, so as we looked at carbo loading, it's possible to get so many carbs into the system and store them, but you're still probably going to hit the wall where you're running very low on carbohydrates. If I can increase my usage of fats early on in the race, that saves more carbohydrates, more glycogen for later on in the race. So I'm less likely to hit the wall. I'm less likely to run out of carbohydrates, less likely to run out of glycogen. And we call that glycogen sparing. I'll put that down. If you are going for high grades, that is a great answer to put down. Glycogen sparing, you spare more glycogen for later on. But surprise, surprise, like with everything else we've mentioned so far, there are going to be some side effects, okay? Now, with that mental alertness and reduction in fatigue, there are going to be some fairly obvious side effects. Number one, insomnia, not being able to sleep. I know you're all fit, active people, but I bet you've all been out on a cheeky night out and the vodka and Red Bulls have made an appearance and you've got in later on and you've laid in bed. What a great night. You're just thinking, I can't fall asleep now. It's really struggled to get to sleep. That's the effects of caffeine in your system. Equally, if you have too much coffee or too many carbonated drinks during the day, you're going to get insomnia. They will also accept things like sleep deprivation. Space on the screen. So insomnia and sleep deprivation are common side effects. You're also going to get things like irregular heartbeat. And I believe I have just missed out on R. That is terrible grammar. Please forgive me. Irregular heartbeat. You'll often hear people get like heart palpitations when they've had too much caffeine. When I was at university, I had a guy who I used to work for when I used to work in the Student Union bar who had 20 cups of coffee a day on average. And he was in his 40s and having heart palpitations on a large amount of time. And that's just purely the amount of caffeine. Ridiculous amount of caffeine to be consuming. One of the other key side effects of caffeine is withdrawal. If you then do try to cut it back, you will get withdrawal symptoms. Headaches, shaking hands, trembling, things like that. So, yes, caffeine is legal. Yes, it has all these brilliant positive effects here on this side. But equally, if you are going to take more caffeine to boost your performance, be aware that these are the side effects that you're going to come across as well. Right, this is one that you might be thinking, what? I've never heard of this. What is this doing on here? Bicarbonate of soda, baking soda. In other words, this is stuff that people use to put in breads when they're making biscuits and cookies and things like that. You can go and buy this from Asda or Tesco or, Waitrose if you're posh. I'm not judging. You can go to any of these places and buy a tub of baking soda for £1. Maybe a little bit more. Bicarbonate of soda, athletes will actually use this, and I did my dissertation on this when I was at university. Baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, soda loading, it is all the same thing. Now, what's the first thing you need to know about baking soda is that it's an alkali. So we're going back to our science when we were kids at school. And what do we know about alkali? They are the opposites. They are the opposite to acid. So you might see where we're going with this. What we can do, and what athletes do, is they can consume bicarbonate, sodium bicarbonate, before exercise, okay, to make the blood, in your blood, more alkali. So you might remember that you was on about pHs when you was in chemistry and things like that. pH 7 is neutral. Our blood is a pH 7 point something. It's slightly alkali. But what do we produce when we exercise? We produce acids. Pyruvic acid, which isn't really a problem. Lactic acid, though, that's the big problem. So the theory is this: if I can get more alkali in my blood, when I start producing more lactic acid, I can actually neutralise more of that lactic acid. So I will be able to work for harder and longer. So it does have a definite benefit. So what do we say? What are the key benefits of doing this? It increases the buffering capacity of blood. Now, you might not have heard of that word before, buffering, right? We do not remove, we do not break down, we do not neutralise lactic acid, we buffer it, which means weirdly, all those things I've just said, you neutralise it, you break it down, you remove it. But the proper term is we buffer the lactic acid, okay? So it increases the buffering capacity of the increase the buffering capacity of the blood in order to remove the lactic acid, okay? So what does that do? It decreases, let me just get rid of that because I started to write what the arrow was representing, which is pointless. It decreases lactic acid levels. What is the overall benefit of that? Athlete can use the lactic acid system for longer. So that's going to be really beneficial to those 800 metre runners. You remember the lactic acid system will last for up to 1 to 2 minutes, but the 400, the 200, the 1500 in terms of elite athletes, you're working around that time. So you can really push on. Think about your rowers whose every single muscle is full of lactic acid by the time they get to that 2000 metre line in the rowing. Think of your sprint cyclists who, you know, have got to keep those speeds up for several laps when they're in the velodrome. Really, really important. So it is quite a useful substance to take. But here we go again. If you've ever got some sodium bicarbonate, bicarbonate of soda, whatever you want to call it, and mixed it in with water, you'll see that it froths. It really froths. Now the problem is, it's going to do that inside your stomach. So what are we going to get as a result of trying to do soda loading? We are going to get bloating. Okay? We are going to get our good old friend diarrhea again. And again, I'm forgetting my R's today. We're going to get diarrhea again, which is not a great symptom to have. We're probably also going to get some vomiting. Now, when something attacks your stomach and or your digestive system, we call that GI distress, gastrointestinal distress. When I did this study at university, I had to be very, very careful how much I gave them. I had to give them 0.5 grams for every kilo they weigh, and I had to monitor it very, very carefully. But even then, some of them reported all of these symptoms. And when you're trying to, you know, if you were, for example, doing a 400 metres, it's no point having a more alkali bloodstream so that you can buffer lactic acid if you're bloating, if you've got diarrhea, if you feel like you're going to be sick, because that's just going to outweigh all the possible benefits that soda loading has. So we've got to monitor the amounts that we take very, very carefully. So please don't go to the local shops, buy a tin of sodium bicarbonate, mix it with water, guzzle it down and then go for a run, because it's going to end in tears and a hell of a lot more if you're not careful. Right, finally, this is quite a unique one. I've got to be honest, this one hasn't ever come up on the exam so far. So either it's fallen out of favour or it's massively overdue. You look into it what you will. Herbal remedies are things like what you can see in that picture. What's the first thing to say about them? They are based on things like plant extracts. They are natural occurring things. They aren't manufactured. Yes, you don't. Yes, they're put into tablet form or oil form, so they've got to be processed, but they're not manufactured. These are oils, these are substances, these are powders taken from plant extracts, from plant material, things that are grown. What can we say about it? I always think it's good to have a couple of examples of this. And if you look in the various textbooks for the AQA syllabus, they give a few examples. The two that I always think of, because the words that I'm most familiar with, so I'll put an EG. For example, you've got ginseng. Now, ginseng, you find in a lot of your natural energy drinks and things like that, because it's very similar to caffeine. What does it do? It increases mental alertness. Okay, so again, in theory, it'll speed up your reaction times, again, make you react a little bit quicker. At the opposite end of the spectrum, you've got things like chamomile, where you might have a mum, a granny, maybe I'm being sexist there, maybe granddad and dad loves one as well, chamomile tea. Now, what chamomile does is it reduces stress. Some people say it also promotes sleep. So someone who's had a hard day might have a cup of chamomile tea. The other thing as well is you might have heard of chamomile lotion that people put on when they've had chicken pox, because it also helps tissue repair. So that's quite a useful substance to have. Now, why is the reduced stress to promote sleep important? If you're an athlete, that's not going to benefit you in terms of going for a training session, but if you've got to get up and train again tomorrow, you want a good night's sleep, you want your body to fully recover, ready for training tomorrow. So some athletes will often take chamomile tea on a night time following a heavy day's training, ready for training the next day. Why take them, I suppose, is the thing that you might be thinking, and it's really linked to that natural word there. And if I just do this down here, and I've got to be very careful how I phrase this, so I can tell you it right. By taking natural plant extracts, herbal remedies, athletes think they are less likely to fail drugs tests. Now, that's the reason why a lot of athletes will take natural things as opposed to manufactured things. Now, the key thing here is, well, it's that think thing. Athletes in the past have failed drug tests through taking, or claim to have taken, plant extracts, herbal remedies. The point is, if you take too much or a lot of something, that is going to elevate levels of certain chemicals in your bloodstream, and they're going to be detected when you go for drugs tests and things like that. So even though they think that they are less likely to fail a drug test, there is still a chance that they might. But obviously, if you are just taking natural things, you are less likely to fail a drug test than if you are taking manufactured substances. Okay? But the big downside to this is there is little evidence to support their benefits. The claims that these substances make are largely unfounded. The vast majority of studies out there that have been done that show that they work, the studies have been conducted by the companies that make the herbal remedies in the first place. So obviously, they're going to show that they are of benefit. Don't forget, anything that's made or manufactured in a lab has to be tested out. There's got to be studies performed on it because it's got to be deemed fit and safe for human consumption. When it's plant extracts and it's natural, you don't have to follow those same procedures because you eat natural fruit. When you go and buy your fruit and veg, that's all natural plant material that you consume in there. So there's very little research done on the benefits of herbal remedies, and that has been done is very inconclusive. So there's not much out there to support its benefits. I know that's been a long video, but I hope you found it useful. Watch this as many times as you need to. You're trying to make 3 or 4 points on each of these substances, and you've got to outline the benefits, who would be taking them, which type of athlete, but what are the downsides to taking each of these supplements. Good luck with it, folks. Hope it all goes well.